Okay, it's 6:30. Let's call the Kodiak Island Borough Assembly Special Work Session to order. It's Wednesday, June 1st, 2022, 6:30 PM in the Assembly's chambers. We will start with citizens' comments, and I should state that a work session is an informal meeting. If you want your comments to be part of an official record, then you should come tomorrow night, which is the regular meeting. That'd be Thursday at 6:30 here. In the meantime, if you want to call in, it's 907-486-3231, toll-free 1-855-492-9202. If you're here, please turn on the mic, sign in, state your name for the record. If you're calling in, please state your name so we know who we're talking with, and turn down your listening device so we don't get feedback. In all cases, try to be civil. Thank you. Okay, no citizens' comments. That moves us right to our agenda item. And I'd like to first of all thank Dora for putting this paperwork out. Now that I can see it in front of me, it makes a hell of a lot more sense than when people were bantering it around. So I appreciate that, and I think probably tonight's meeting will be fairly quick now that we see what we're working with. With that, it's the item on the agenda is the follow-up discussion on the Kodiak Island Borough budget. In your packet, you have a version 2, which the manager's budget with some changes due to some changes in personnel and other things that affected the original budget. And then you have a budget version that is proposed by James and Scott. And James and Scott, it seems to me that basically what you're doing is pulling things out, putting them into that holding tank contingency, so that if we don't use ARPA funds for buying like the vehicles, we can pull it back out. And there was a couple other things in there that you changed, that you put in there in case we had ARPA funds to pay for them. Am I right in making that assumption?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I'll turn it over to both of you.
What would you like to know? You want me to go through the whole thing again, as we did last week, or?
You know, I think you went through it pretty well last week. I think the things that we should look at are the changes to the manager's budget that are not based on ARPA funding. The one of them that I got my nose bent out of shape, and I apologize for that, is deciding that a budget is a place to say, no, you don't want cameras. That's something you get to vote on when it comes up. But that was $50,000 out of the, out of our computer department, whatever they call it these days. But there were a few other changes. Some of them were changes that needed to be made, like changes in assessing based on the replacement of an employee that was going to leave. That I don't think you have to touch on. I think that's pretty straightforward. If you just touch on any changes you made, any basic changes you made, to the manager's budget where you cut something and didn't account for it elsewhere.
Well, I'll speak to the camera. The cameras is that 50,000 there. I'm looking for a plan. I'm not looking to throw money at it, Bill, and then come up with a plan later. If it's that important, I want to see what it's going to cost. The school district has spent between $250,000 and $500,000 on cameras. So we need to, I want to see a plan. I don't want to just say, well, because in going over it with Dora, basically IT just picked a number. There is no plan for them. So that's my problem on there. And let's look at it over the course of the next year, or basically what would be the budget starts in January, so over the course of the next 7 months, and have a plan on maybe what we need. We've had some issues with oil tanks, and maybe that's part of what goes in there. And that also, then you're looking at something that goes in the KFRC building, where we've had that issue there, and maybe there's some other the buildings too. But let's come up with a plan first.
Okay.
And that's why we took it out of there.
Okay, and I understand now why you took it out of there. I thought you were just against security cameras, which didn't make sense. So really what you want to know is where you're going to put them and why. And we do have ARPA money that might very well, if it's security, might very well be spendable in that way, so it may not even have to wait till next budget. Is that true, my thinking true with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the other one is legislative. We've changed some of the numbers in there. As I had spoke on a number of other times, everybody knows what that's all about. Then you go all the way down to community development. We took out 15,000, and I'm being told that it's trailer and winch. And then we put in building official, we put in an extra 7,500, and that was because of the assumption of that contract going up because of wages for the city.
Well, that was because we're planning on getting together and hiring engineer between
engineering.
the city.
That as well. So,
Okay,
and then economic development, I raised it 20,000 to put that 20,000 back in. That we had a few times over the last couple of years. Subtracted 80,000 out of general administration, and that is basically the two vehicles that we were talking about just a few minutes ago, and then added in, I'm gonna forget the number, but it's somewhere between 600, 610,000, instead of putting it into, I think we were putting it into buildings, facilities maintenance. excuse
Facility
me.
maintenance.
The next one is $4,200 taken out of emergency preparedness. Basically, maintenance and repair. And that's really all there is.
what was the 15,000 on the community development? I don't remember discussing.
That was a trailer and winch.
Oh,
It was felt that if, didn't belong in community development, if we're picking up, towing something more under, what do I want to call it, the dump.
That's pretty much the.
excuse me, the sanitary landfill, Scott.
Couldn't think of that term, dump came to mind.
That's basically the 100 section of the general fund. And then there is a transfer out. We changed that to 118,336 instead of, I believe the original was 340,000, I believe, if I can remember correctly. 240, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. And if I can get into the 200s. Where'd you find that?
It was on last week's.
Oh, okay. So, one of the biggest ones is use of fund balance, changing that from 110, or excuse me, 1.1 million to 500,000. And then buildings and grounds, dropping at 80,000 for vehicle again. Dropping mental health center. If you guys have that.
Snow removal.
Snow removal, then maintenance and repairs in Larson Bay, 234,215, and then Carlick School, 234,225, dropping that 100.
Might go right over. Yeah, you got yours.
Oh yeah, it's the back sheet. Anything else?
I think you covered it.
Okay.
Okay. Questions from the assembly? Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure who this question needs to be directed towards. But when I look at the removal of the purchase of a truck, the lift gate and the plow attachment, looking at potentially having to buy a new outboard myself, I'm trying to hedge my bet. Like, when do I place the order? Because how long is it gonna take me to actually get this new outboard so that I time my current outboard dying at the time the new one shows up? So I say all of that because my question is, with supply issues as they are right now, I don't know how specialty of an item this plow truck with a lift gate really is and how hard those are to come by. And even if we have the ability to use ARPA funds for that vehicle, is our delay 6 or 7 months going to cost us an ability to actually get that truck or not? So that's my question.
So about 3 weeks ago, I flew to Anchorage and I drove a brand new vehicle. And I can tell you that I could have bought 15 Dodges, 1500s or 2500s on the lot right there. You cannot order a Ford. And seeing as we don't have a car dealership here anymore, really don't think that matters. Trailer Craft, there's a bunch of different companies in Anchorage that can install lift gates, plows, that kind of thing. I can have a package together next week. I have been doing some extensive reading on the ARPA funds. From what I glean from the ARPA funds, you can buy fire trucks and you can buy ambulances, emergency vehicles only. However, you can buy lost revenue replacement, put large sums of money into your revenue replacement, and then you have the ability to transfer within your budget. So basically, we're going to come back and we're going to end up asking you for those funds out of the same funds that we're cutting out of. That would be the way I would think it would work. Perhaps I'm wrong.
Any other questions, any comments to Dave? No? I had one other question. This came to me after the meeting last week. We had that meeting where the Baranoff Park committee came and asked for money, and we all, to a man, I think, on the podium here, everybody was shaking their heads, yeah, that's a good idea. And James even said we ought to fully fund them if we can with ARPA funds. But I don't see anywhere in here that, what was there, 70,000 or 17,000? Where are we going to come up with that out of here, or are we just going to hope we can do it with ARPA?
Well, there's two ways that we could do it. One, wait for the lost revenue funds to come in, as was pointed out a minute ago, or we can take it out of the general administration contingencies once we decide on that.
Okay. Any comments from staff? Roxanne?
My hope out of tonight is that we just get some clarity about what we will attach for the public hearing tomorrow. That's my real dream, because transparency for the government, I'm sure, is important to all of us. And I know we don't have a whole plethora of people that come and testify, but for any of the listening audience or the newspaper or anything, it'd be really nice if we could get clear about that. And then what we'll do for a process is based on what you decide tonight to give direction to administration about, we can update the agenda item and then create the attachment so people will know what they're providing testimony on. So I just wanted to provide that information. I'd really appreciate it if we could support the manager's budget, but I will serve at the will of the assembly.
I think that probably tomorrow night, there's going to be the possibility of two versions of a budget. One's going to be version 2 manager's budget, the other one's going to be version 1, Scott?
Version 3.
Oh, version 3. So I think that's all you need to attach. I think that it'll be introduced one way or the other. If it's introduced by Scott, who does most of the introductions, because nobody else wants to raise their hand, I think you all need shoulder surgery or something. But Scott will introduce it. He'll probably introduce it as version 3. And then we will get a second, we'll discuss it, and we'll vote on it. And if majority of somebody says, nah, we just don't want to go that way, we don't want to mess around with the ARPA fund kind of deal, then that will be voted on and voted down. If it's voted on and voted up, then we're done. But you should have both of them in there, because if it gets voted down, then somebody's going to have to make a version 2, right? So that's it. That's all there is going to be to it tomorrow. We're going to go to public hearing on version 3, and probably if it gets voted down, we'll go to a second public hearing on version 2, even though there's really not a whole lot of differences between the two. It's just how you want to play with the money.
Thank you. This is the real clarity that I needed, and then
Does
I'll
anybody,
be,
Does anybody here disagree with that statement? That's pretty much it. So really, tonight, we just got here and everybody finally got to see it without it floating in air, and can see what's going on, and they can make up their mind how they're going to vote tomorrow. Unfortunately, we're missing 3 members of the assembly tonight, but tomorrow they can be caught up to speed, because it's not that complicated. It's not that complicated one way or the other. It's how you want to deal with your money. Am I right?
Yep.
Does anybody see any
I agree.
reason to continue discussing it?
No.
Anybody in the audience think that they have anything to add? I'm glad to listen to anybody at this point. With that, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you for showing up on a Wednesday night.